Before we begin, a message from the Golf Performance Center. Join us on January 30th for our virtual open house.
Good evening, Hub Nation. Welcome to another episode of 5 Elements of Success Player Development Series. I'm Roger Nick, your host and founder of Junior Golf Hub. We've got a great show for you this evening. We're going to be talking more about the primary fundamentals, the sixth of the six primary fundamentals. So we're really excited about talking about that and helping you control your club face. So what goes into that as well. As always, make sure you send in your questions, comments, concerns to 5elements@thegolfperformancecenter.com. Again, we want to hear from you. Bring in some suggestions for topics. We want to hear and hopefully make this show better for you and also better for us as well. So we want to have fun with this. So send in those comments and concerns. Also to the Golf Performance Center. 5elements@thegolfperformancecenter.com. So thanks so much for that. Our pop quiz question this evening is going to be, what has the most influence on the start direction of your golf ball? Club path or club face? Let me repeat that because the winner's going to get this beautiful Cleveland wedge. So we want to make sure that you get a chance to win this wedge. So what has the most influence on the start direction of your golf ball? The club path or club face? So send in those questions. Later on the show, we're going to pull out that random winner. So we want to see if you win this wedge from Cleveland Golf. So thanks so much for participating with that. Also, got Tyler Campbell here, Director of Performance. I almost forgot who you were. You're making me nervous. You got demoted. No, I'm just kidding. You didn't get demoted. Anyway, Tyler Campbell, Director of Performance here at the Golf Performance Center, co-host. So always great to have you here. And Dennis Hillman, Director of Coaching for the Golf Performance Center. Again, always a pleasure. We're going to have a big debate tonight, I think. But before we get into that, let's talk. What did we cover last week?
Yeah, it was a good show last week, guys. We talked about club path, the fifth of the 6 primary fundamentals. What are some of the lead factors involved with club path? Obviously, as we're going to mention here shortly, and we mention every week, function dictates form. So we talked about the importance of the ability to have good range of motion and mobility in certain areas, good rotation, if you will, segmental stability and control of that range of motion to give ourselves the best opportunity at sequencing properly and getting that club on the right path. On the golf side, we covered some drills, just working, kind of gamifying your practice a little bit, working the 9 ball flights, and just getting creative out there. Dennis has some cool stories about practicing with Tiger when they were Utes, and it was a pretty cool experience, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. A couple years ago.
Just a couple, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
seems like yesterday.
And you took him down.
Once.
You know what? I was just watching that Tiger Woods show on HBO. I don't know if you guys have seen that yet. And I tell you what, very interesting. I didn't see you in there for some reason.
Did he want to kind of? No, you did. He just had way more hair.
He didn't want to sweep it in the rug, I think.
You didn't recognize me. That's
Anyway, again, that was last week. Thanks, Tyler. Yeah. This week, again, we're talking about club face and that primary fundamentals and what it really means to you and what's going to influence that. Dennis, here we are, again, back into our developmental phases, primary fundamentals. We've talked the last few weeks about all of these primary fundamentals.
Yep.
Talk about the club face and what that really means.
Yeah, so it's the top of the pyramid, and we finally reached the top of the mountain, if you will, that ultimate lag factor that we talk about. You can see the pyramid there in your screen. We've gone through those the last 5 weeks, from the ground all the way up. So, the way we're looking at it is, you're standing on the ground, so you're connected to the ground, and on the other end, you're connected to the golf club. So you're going to leverage the ground to rotate, ideally create some speed and deliver that golf club in the best way possible. So, looking at how does that happen, are there any inefficiencies in how you transfer the energy? Ultimately, the last thing that receives that energy is the club head. So the direction it moves ultimately is going to determine how you have to kind of manipulate the club face to control the golf ball.
Yeah, which is the ultimate, controlling the golf ball.
That's it. That's name of the game.
Name of the game. So getting into that, and before we get into that, because again, I'm really looking forward to the discussion on club face tonight. But there are factors on the physical side, Tyler, that influence this as well. And there's probably some exercises, some tests or protocols you can go through and share with the audience on how to determine what might be the best grip, or how to control the club face.
No, absolutely. And each week, as we've gone through the primary fundamentals, we've discussed the physical relationship and what's needed to succeed at that primary fundamental. And we mentioned hip rotation and thoracic rotation and segmental stability. Well, you need those those factors and those characteristics in your wrists and hands as well. That's ultimately what's connected to the golf club. So let's go through a few, motions that are used in the golf swing, and then you at home can just use your simple 6-iron to get a feel for whether or not you might be limited in these areas, and know you have to work on them. So I guess for starters, we'll just take you through 3 quick assessments, if you will. I might have you just hold that 6-iron for me while I'm doing it.
Okay.
But we're going to start with flexion and extension. So if I'm starting off just with my arms straight out in front of me with a nice soft fist, all I want to do is go ahead and bring my wrists down into what we're calling flexion here. All right. Now, you'll notice the angle of my forearm to the top of my hand. I really want that to be parallel with the 6-iron or even a little bit further. All right. So if you go into flexion and you're only about here, you're going to be a little limited in wrist flexion. All right. Now, likewise, if you flip that 6-iron upside down now, we're going to look at wrist extension. All right. So again, I'm neutral here, and I'm going to go into wrist extension. So again, if I go into extension and I'm only right about here, that tells me that I'm limited there. So you really want to have about 60 degrees of flexion and extension. It doesn't mean that you can't have more or less, but if you're limited there, it could show up in the golf swing. It could be moving in a certain way as a result. The next that I want to point out is radial and ulnar deviation. All right, fancy name here. I always say start tall, ski poles. All right, so keeping the forearm parallel to the ground with a thumb up, I'm just going to point the thumb away from me and pull it towards. All right, we'll go away, pull it towards. Now we can use that 6-iron to let me know if I'm doing it enough. Go ahead and turn it up first. Yep. So again, if you're looking at the angle between my forearm and my thumb, I really want that to be right in line with the grooves or even up, even a little further. And then likewise, if you turn that down, and now I'm going to take this and I'm going to point this way. Now, the line is not my thumb anymore. All right, it's more the angle of the middle of my palm. Yeah, the bottom side of my hand, if you will. All right.
So if we turn that around, maybe they can see the club. What do you think?
Yeah, there you go.
This way.
Yep.
Let's go.
I like it. You want to try this side?
You flip around. Yeah, there you go.
Let's give it a shot.
See it that way.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm here. And again, if you had a line right through the middle of my hand, is that line going to be parallel to the sole of that 6-iron? All right, and that would pass the ulnar deviation test. And then radial deviation, again, if I come up. Now, common mistakes here is if when you go into radial deviation, if that hand wants to cup, you're kind of faking that motion there by going into extension at the wrist.
All right.
And then last but not least, pronation, supination. So just standing tall, again, elbows into the sides, turn that palm down, and then turn that palm up. And again, if you've got any kind of medical history where you might have broken some bones or something, sometimes we'll see that get a little tight as you turn that palm down. Again, check it off as maybe I need to work on that motion. Mm-hmm. Or if we know it's part of your history, that could just be something we need to keep in mind as we're going through some of the mechanics. So all 3 of those motions are involved in the golf swing. You guys are going to be talking about a little later on with regards to controlling that club face.
But one of the other factors there too is torso rotation, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So
we talked about last week.
Yeah. So we talked about that last week and how that influences where the arms are going and how they're actually moving, which again could also affect how the hands are moving.
No doubt. Yeah. If the arms, like I would even say it goes further down than that. It starts with the ground, right? Yeah. So if the lower body's moving a certain way, the upper body's going to move a certain way on top of that. And then if that's moving well, great. If it's not, you're probably going to end up compensating at the arms, hands, and wrists. It's a trickle-down effect for sure. Which
then obviously affects the club face, which kind of gets, let's go back to now on the golf coaching side of things. You know that. You got this information. We go through this assessment. It's a part of all of our assessment here at Golf Performance Center. What do you do with that information?
Yeah, I think, some of it, to be honest, some of it we keep for ourselves. I mean, we don't necessarily want to overload our juniors with information that they may not need, but sometimes we'll bring in certain pieces of information to help them understand why they're, having trouble controlling the ball the way they are. We definitely want to understand the entire function of the body. Again, how that energy is being transferred through, that pyramid that you're looking at. But ultimately, the last part of the body that the energy goes through is the hands to get to the club. So the wrist angles are an important piece of the puzzle.
Yeah. Well, we're going to bring in our special guest tonight, Nick Novak, the lead coach here at the Golf Performance Center. Nick, welcome to the show. And our resident grip expert, I think. Did I say that right? Or is it no? Oh, okay. No, I'm just kidding. No, but anyway, welcome. And you guys have a really tough task because we're talking about junior golfers and what's happening and how they're actually controlling the golf ball. And it's a huge topic out there, right? Because I know for a long time we've talked about, hey, you got to get the perfect grip on, and then we work kind of from the grip backwards almost. We go from the top of the pyramid down, it seems like, in our industry quite often, calling out our PGA professionals out there. So, maybe listen up. So Nick, talking about holding the club and how important it is to hold the club, is that something that, when you start coaching the players, what are you talking about?
See that the player is able to do a few key things, hinge their wrist, that at least the way that they grab the club and hold the club is not going to limit their ability to hinge their wrist and unhinge their wrist. And, I know that they're trying to hit the ball hard, and if they're unable to hinge their wrist or unhinge their wrist, they're going to end up compensating and trying to get speed from somewhere else. And sometimes it's a good place, and sometimes it's a not so good place to get the speed from.
Yeah, well, the hinging the wrist is a lever, right? I mean, what we're talking about is just another lever. Obviously, we had elbows, we have our shoulders levers, and all that. But so, how important then, Dennis, is it that we talk about club face versus grip? And getting that right in the sequence of development, because I think that's one of the things we hear all the time, how maybe we don't have it right in our industry. Maybe we need something.
Yeah, I mean, again, we're talking to all you juniors out there, and if you're looking at it long term, I mean, quality movement is the key. So efficient movement, because if you look on whether it's the PGA Tour or the LPGA Tour, I mean, they're crushing the golf ball and they're controlling it. So, if you look at this pyramid, I mean, it's laying the foundation for the future. So your grip could end up in different places based on a lot of variables. So we know that majors have been won with really strong grips, with really weak grips. So we can't say that there's this one size fits all, when it comes to grip, or probably really anything, but we can say that there are certain efficiencies and inefficiencies in the swing when it comes to, swinging at high speeds, controlling it, not getting hurt. So, I think it's just the understanding, okay, this is, this causes this, or this is at least correlated to this. So, we just bring in the information, I think, when we need it, so that they can understand.
Yeah, well, I think what we tend to do a lot, let's just go right to the mess that's on the table here, right, is we tend to look at the PGA Tour players and say, well, by God, they're the best at it, and they're the best in the world, so why wouldn't we just teach what's out there and teach every player to do the same things, right? So Nick, I know you've got great experiences working with a lot of different players, and you've seen a lot of the best players out there, and I think that's kind of the thing that happens quite often. And I think you've brought a nice perspective to grip and club face control. And so let's talk about that.
Yeah, it's really common to go to the finished product and try to reverse engineer what we should be doing. But the question is, can they be better? Is there a better way? That's what they're doing. And a lot of those players are missing cuts every week. A lot of those players are on a roller coaster, up and down, up and down. It's a really hard game. So it's really easy to say, hey, these are the best players in the world. Let's just follow. If they eat pineapples on Wednesdays, let's eat pineapple on Wednesday. Yeah. But, maybe watermelon might be good on Wednesday too. Maybe you'll make a little more birdies with a watermelon on Wednesday. But, in all seriousness, we have an opportunity here to look at the lead factors that influence those things. And I think that's what's so cool here, is just not jumping to the finished product and saying, hey, whatever they're doing, let's do it. And saying, hey, is there a better way? Can there be a player that maybe doesn't get hurt? A lot of these players are missing time from injury, and it's kind of the new norm. I know a lot of people are predicting that these players are going to have shorter careers. And that's the trade-off maybe is by going with this ultimate,
all-out mentality.
All-out mentality. It's
Yeah.
like, hey, let's make 50 million in 10 years and I don't have to play again. But is that the right way to go about it? I mean, maybe these guys want to be able to pick up their kids when they're older, or get on the ground and play with them. And I don't know if they're going to be able to.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that really made me think about what it is we're doing. Is there a better way? And looking and being on the driving range at all these places and looking at all these great players, and you start going, okay, well, it works for them, but will it work for everyone? There's got to be a better way, because again, as you said, there's a triage out there on the PGA Tour. They're hurt every week. There's chronic injuries. There's chronic pain. Is that the way the game is supposed to be played? I don't know if it is. I'd like to think not, as I'm getting a little older in my game as well. Is that I don't want to be in pain every time I go out.
Yeah, I think it's really a hard thing to appreciate when you're, a teenager. For the most part, I mean, maybe some of you have dealt with injuries already, but for the most part, you think, it's a long way off to where you're really thinking about not being able to get up and get out of bed and move really quickly and be loose. So, but if you want to have a long career in golf and you've got big goals down the road, I mean, for sure, laying that foundation of good movement quality is key. And the grip may be where it is for a while based on how you move, and then it could change down the road. So, but if you focus on the movement first and the physical preparation, I think that's key.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think, Nick?
Yeah, I think that the grip can be learned over time. I think that there's some self-discovery. I think that when self-discovery happens, that the learning is more long-term, has a longer lasting effect than maybe if I were to tell someone to change the grip. But at the same time, I don't want a player failing over and over and over, and maybe you give them a little nudge or you give them a little piece of the solution, and then you let that little seed grow, and they come to you and say, hey, this is, what I felt, or this is what I figured out. And that's what really gets me excited, is when the player's turned on and activated and they're learning. And I know that learning is more long-term than just giving it to them all at once for free and they're not doing anything for it.
Giving it to them for free. And in golf, that's a little kind of oxymoron, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I think that's a little off, but I think
all at once.
All at once. Okay, got it. So they're going to be overwhelmed. Is that what you're saying? We were talking before the show, and we're talking about, I had an experience when I was younger professional, and it was a great experience when working down in Pinehurst with Fred Shoemaker and Extraordinary Golf and Mike Hebron. We're doing some clinics down in Pinehurst. And I was telling you, there was a guy there that had unfortunately both of his arms had been cut off right below the elbows. And we were talking about, again, the old teaching model, which is, hey, grip, stance, posture, alignment, those kind of things, the PGA way. And we noticed this guy was in the audience, and it was kind of like, what now? Right? What does that guy do? So how important is having the perfect grip? And then what are some of the grips that are out there that lead us to what works for you? Because again, this person didn't even have hands and figured out a way to be a scratch golfer or a two-handicap golfer without having a grip on the club, if you will.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that.
That's really interesting. I haven't experienced that directly myself, but I think you're going to find a way, right? You're going to try to find a way to get the ball to go to where you want with as much speed as you can, as much control. So Tyler explained the screen that we go through to understand, the wrist mobility in different directions. Obviously, we do that from head to toe, and then, when we look at the golf swing, the reason club path comes before club face is that as you transfer that energy, that is going to dictate, as you rotate with high speeds, how that club comes into the golf ball. Now, as you go ahead and hit golf balls and you react to where it goes, you're going to you may change your grip without even really realizing you're changing your grip, or you're changing the way you release the club, to get the ball to go to where you want. So, that's the way I see it. So when we look at a player, we don't just say, well, this grip has to change. I think we're saying, well, why don't we work on the movement? The movement will change, and then when they can actually move that way, then maybe the grip will come along, and we'll give that education, when the body is ready to move in that way.
Yeah. I think that's really, really well said. I mean, thinking about the grip, though, there are three common grips out there, and what are those grips, if you would? Let's go through that.
Yeah, you have the 10-finger grip, which is both hands just touching, slid. You slide the two hands into each other. You have the overlap grip, and then you have the interlock grip. And players have won a lot of money using all three of those grips. Jack Nicklaus, Tiger Woods use interlock, so that's what I went with because I was a big Tiger fan out in Southern California.
Yep.
But there's no question that a lot of money has been made with all of those grips.
Yeah. And it's not one grip that fits all, right? I mean, it's obviously the process of discovery is what you're talking about. And 10-finger grip, commonly known as a baseball grip, and we see a lot of transitional athletes go from playing other sports to golf, and I know myself as being one of those, and I think you had mentioned baseball, and you picked up golf, and really interesting. I actually think you had a baseball background before you beat Tiger Woods.
Oh yeah. No, about 2 years when I was 9 or 10.
Yeah, but kind of moving and transitioning into that, I think there's a lot of that you can bring to the table in learning and discovering with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have 3 kids of my own, 3 little kids, and I let them grab it. One of them hits it cross-handed, and I just let him go cross-handed because I just want him to enjoy hitting the golf ball and just slamming the golf ball into the net. I don't care how he does it or what he does. And I think there's something to that is, you don't want to bog the student down with the restrictions and hey, do it this way. This is the only way, because we all know that that's not the only way. I mean, if there's only one sure thing, is that there is no sure thing. And I think that's, the ultimate, lesson here is that there's so many ways to grip it. Tom Lehman had his right hand completely under the club, and there's guys with the opposite. And I think that's an important lesson for a lot of juniors to know. Don't be bogged down with this mandated perfect grip, as we all know there is not one.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of the same thing with the philosophies, right? I mean, when it comes to swing philosophies, and there's many different swings that's won out there on tour, many different majors and so forth. And I think again, that is is attributed to how they grew up and where they grew up and what experiences they had, right? And it wasn't again, is why there could be a better way. And if we're looking at this from a development standpoint, is why wouldn't we look at it from if I were going to build the best golfer ever, how would I do that? And I think that's kind of, I know commonly how we've been talking about and discussing the primary fundamentals, and then there's the other part of that, which is the preferred fundamentals. So talk a little bit about what that means too, because we can say primary fundamentals all we'd like, but the reality is there's going to be some hey, I'm going to push back against that.
Yeah, so the preferred fundamentals we look at are something that we'll try to address more in season. So we're talking alignment, ball position, club face. So that is those 3. When you combine those 3, you have some different combinations that can work when it comes to club path and club face, right? So, I mean, basic understanding of ball position. The farther back in your stance, that club path might be more in to out. The more forward, it might be more out to in as the club comes from the inside and back to the inside. Club face. I mean, well, grip. I mean, Nick obviously showed different ways you can put your hands on. I don't know if I can demonstrate this, but
why don't you get right here in the camera there, so they can see. I'll move out of the way.
So there are different ways from this perspective, as far as if we look at just the top hand, right, you may be very strong, right? So that's something that's very common for juniors that have played at least for a couple of years. So we wonder, why does that evolve, right? So a lot of times we might see a junior hooking the golf ball with a strong grip, and we say, well, okay, that's a club face issue, but probably it stemmed from a path issue. Maybe they're too in to out for different reasons the way the body moves. So, that would be considered a strong grip, all right? And that's, again, it's chicken or the egg, but it's going to definitely be a reaction to the way you move and influence the way you move. And then a really weak grip, right? So a couple examples we'll come back here. Dustin Johnson has a very strong grip, okay? Back here to weak grips. Who do we have? Spieth or John Rahm? I think pretty weak, okay? So now that may require more face rotation. But again, we don't necessarily want to change the grip immediately just because it doesn't look like it's a perfectly neutral grip. Like if this was a neutral grip, okay? We don't want to change that. We want to understand it first. So again, we go back, we work on the movement, and then we'll address the grip in time. So preferred fundamentals we start working on those with players more in season, and usually with players that have been here for a few years and have mastered some primary fundamentals. Now it's time to really work on those preferred fundamentals, fine-tune them to get to that high-level ball control.
And that's what we're looking for. And I know, Nick, as we're talking about, you working with some of those best players out there and seeing some of the best players and, understanding, at the end of the day, it's got to control your golf ball, however you do it, right? I mean, that's really important. One of the reasons why, best young teachers out there in Golf Digest. So again, kudos to that. That's great. But when you talk about that, what are some of the things that you look for when you're coaching your young players?
Yeah, just like Dennis said, kids are learners, and if they see the ball curving left a lot, which we all know is a path issue, most likely, they're going to start starting the ball out to the right and trying to get that ball to finish on line, and vice versa. If they're curving it way to the right, is a path issue, they're going to start starting the ball way left, which is face. And in the custom clubs bay, we say that the face sends it and the path bends it. And so they're going to learn to send it in a certain direction depending on the curve. And like Dennis mentioned earlier, that the movement of the body is really a big influencer on the path, that those are the lead factors of the path. So once they have that path, they're going to start manipulating, and they're going to start starting it left and starting it right, because they're not going to let the ball go in the woods over and over. These kids are they're gamers. They want to win, and they don't care how they do it. And so it's important for them to understand just the connection, so you can give them, the little seed and watch it grow and say, hey, just so if it's curving a lot to the right, that's a path thing, and maybe we don't want to be playing the 40-yard slice, for our whole career.
Right.
But if it's working and they have the ultimate control over it, that might be a really nice ball flight for them this summer, and they might be able to make a lot of birdies like that as well.
Zach Johnson, right? He played that his whole career, and hopefully it's continuing. But kind of thinking about that too. Now, equipment has a lot to do with the grip changes and what we do, right? How I'm going to grab hold of the club. Maybe my, the equipment too long, too heavy. I may have to grab it and lever it a certain way. So that has an influence on it, correct?
Yeah, and even grip size. Grip size can change the way you lay your hands on the club. I know that Gabe is tinkering with grip size in his fittings a lot, just to see if it affects their ball flight. As you know, we're trying to get these, trying to optimize them a little bit for a club fitting experience. And so we definitely, the grip will change it. The size of the grip, even the weight of the club sometimes can have an effect on that stuff. It's all part of that ecosystem.
And that's why it's so important to understand, where we began with Tyler is how somebody can move their wrist and understand that their grip may have, if they have, limited radial deviation but good extension, they might be in a strong grip because now they can leverage the club using the mobility that they have. So rather than us saying, well, that grip's too strong, but wait, there's a reason, functionally, why it is that way.
Yeah, that's great. And it's one reason why, again, we do the self-assessment, we do the coach-guided PDI assessments and the full PDI assessments out there. If you're looking for understanding, it might be a great place for you to start. Check out on the Junior Golf Hub, download that app and do your self-guided assessments, and then look for a coach. Check us out and see if we can't get that for you. So it give you a good place to start anyway. I think that's really kind of understanding where you are really kind of hopefully moves you down a pathway, I think. So
absolutely.
Thinking about now the things that you want players to do. So give us some drills that you would work on. How do I kind of figure out what grip works for me? So give me 3 things.
Yeah. Again, I would say if we reverse engineer, we talk about reverse engineering a lot. I would first go back and understand your path. Somewhere assess your path and start to understand why your grip might be where it is. If you can obviously go through a self-assessment, get some understanding where your functionality is, I think that would be really important. And I think maybe doing the 9 ball flights to see what kind of your go-to shot is.
Yeah, I think that's great. Okay, your go-to drills and some feedback for the audience.
Yeah, I think that watching the start direction of the golf ball gives players really good feedback. It's organic, it's holistic. You don't need a launch monitor. And it also turns on their own reflection of the shot. A lot of the kids, I'll say, well, where did that start? And they don't know. They watch where it lands, and they're not aware really of where it started. So just bringing in that self-awareness of, did it start on line? Did it start left? Did it start low? Did it start high? And watching them learn and progress through those 9 ball flights and paying attention to the start direction of the ball.
Yeah, that's really good. That's some good information. We didn't get into any fist fights or anything, so I don't know if we kind of opposed any viewpoints here, but hopefully you guys learned something about club face and why it's important, how we actually got to club face, those primary fundamentals and that pyramid, how important that is. Also, maybe, if you like what you heard from Dennis or Nick Novak or Tyler Campbell, check out our virtual tour this weekend, open house on Saturday the 30th. So check that out, and you'll maybe get a pop-up here shortly about that as well. So check that out on the 30th. We'll be sending more information out on that soon. But anyway, thanks. Michael, do we have any questions tonight so far?
Yeah, we have a couple questions. First one is, as a junior golfer grows, they will go through a number of natural progressions with their swing, including a change in path, club face, etc. What are your suggestions to keep that more consistent during growth?
Wow, great question.
Yeah, fantastic. I'm sure Tyler has a couple opinions, but I'll try to speak for him. But I think one of the big things we stress is during those growth spurts, juniors can definitely get tight, not move as well. So doing your corrective exercises to maintain your function is really important. But just understanding that your coordination may be lost for a little bit as your limbs are longer and hit that growth spurt that I never quite hit. But
you're still working on it.
That's right. Yeah, I'm still waiting for it when I grow up someday.
Yeah.
So just understand you may lose coordination, I think is really helpful.
And if I can
go ahead.
Add to that, I would say just make sure that the junior is using the properly fit equipment, because that's as they grow and they go through these stages where maybe they get a little clumsy, their limbs are growing at a rapid rate, maybe unproportionally. If you couple that with equipment that's too long, too heavy, it's just going to compound the issues.
Yeah, and that's great. I think one of the things too is just understanding how to manage your expectations, going through the process of the functional movement screening and knowing where you are, kind of getting that neurological connection, as Dennis kind of alluding to there, and checking that on a regular basis. That will help you kind of get through that growth spurt maybe a little bit better, if you will. Any others?
Yeah, we got one more question. I struggle with hitting the ball high. How do I improve controlling the height of the golf ball?
Oh, good question. Why don't we start with you, Nick?
Yeah, so without looking at their swing or their PDI results or their FMS screen, you really have to start with from the ground up. There's a lot of reasons that the ball can go high, and at the end of the day, the club face launches the ball. So if the club face is pointing more upwards, the ball is going to launch more upwards. But there's a lot of factors that can make that club face point up. If your pressure's on your back foot at impact, it might influence that. If you have a lot of side bend, it's going to influence that. And, sure, a grip might influence that as well. If all those things are working properly and it's still launching high, it definitely could be the grip. That could be one of the factors. But there's a lot of moving parts in the swing, and it'd be really tough to answer that without seeing a PDI or seeing an FMS screen to know what they're really doing.
Good. Have any?
I think one of the most common things, obviously Nick alluded to two things: hanging back, side bend is really important. And obviously the hands a lot of times will flip, right? So adds a lot of loft. Usually we see that tied to just kind of early extension, standing out of posture. When the body's not rotating, the hands have to flip and the ball tends to go high. So, just back to understanding how to rotate well from the ground up.
All right. Any other questions?
That's it for questions. But our pop quiz winner this week is Sophia Gorb.
All right, Sophia. Well done. So Sophia, you're going to win this nice Cleveland wedge. So thanks so much for participating. And the question answer was club face.
Club face, that's it.
Where the ball starts. You're supposed to, you're supposed to. So club face is the answer. So thanks. So
and Sophia just got new wedges, so she doesn't need this.
Well, maybe she'll get credit or something. Yeah. All right. Well done, Sophia. Again, congrats on that. As always, want to make sure that we talking about the Junior Golf Hub and downloading that app, getting those coaches in your pocket, finding that right fit for you out there. Also, as we just talked about, that self-assessment, the PDI, Player Development Index, self-assessment. Go there, get your self-assessment, get that journey started there. Find out, reach out to us, and see if we can get a coach-guided PDI as well. that's going to help you, and it's going to help differentiate you, I think, when it comes to players out there looking for those college spots as well. So keep that in mind. And then next week, we're also going to be talking about, the Junior Golf Hub and how that's helping our players, especially in this national letter of intent signing time. We're going to have those guys on talking about that as well. So that's going to be a great show next week, just talking about how, the Junior Golf Hub can help you find that right spot out there for you. And as always, also Ethan Allen Preparatory, again, achieving your greatness in the classroom, on the golf course, and in life. We want to thank them for being a sponsor here as well. And again, let me just remind you, it's the 30th, this Saturday, virtual open house for the Golf Performance Center in Ethan Allen Preparatory. So make sure you tune into that. Check out our website. Check out the Ethan Allen Preparatory website as well for that time and date. Tom Bott will be there to answer any questions, and our coaches there help guide you through that virtual tour. So again, thanks for tuning in. Have a great evening. As always, get after it. Enjoy your journey.